Do you not think it's freezing cold in here?
No, I think it's okay, I have to say.
It's lovely and warm out.
Mm.
But you do think it's okay?
I think it's okay, yeah. I prefer now to fucking getting sleepy.
Well, I'm sure. I nearly died in here before you came
better
down.
not to be sleepy.
Or dead.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting here, there was no aircon on. I was waiting for you, and I started to sort of feel like I was going to nod off. And then I thought, I'll nod off.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, I'm on camera and I'd be outside on floor 2. If anyone walked past, they'd see me like.
But the other thing I get that in those big meetings with people.
We're recording.
I was in there last.
You sure you want to say this?
Well, are we recording?
Yeah. Go on about the big meetings.
Big meetings with our overlords, let's put it that way. Is that, maybe you should cut that out. But
I should have let him keep going there.
Well, I'll keep going. You know, I just keep going.
For anyone listening.
So
I should have just not pointed that out to him, because he was about to say something really controversial that could have cost him his job. What were you going to say?
Well, I just know that they don't listen to every episode. But anyway, because we'd already be in trouble if they did. No, do you know when I was at the meeting and I could feel my eyes?
Oh yeah.
Really and I know then I actually tried to pinch myself to make sure.
Did you not get up and walk away?
No, I had to stand. I stood up a bit, but you're in a big meeting with 20 people and there's on Zoom and they're from our overlords and the European thing.
You can't do that.
No. And then I did at one point, I was really fighting it. And then one thing did wake me up when I heard my name said.
Go, Jesus.
What the?
Yeah. I used to be like that in school all the time, though, and I was allowed to walk around.
Yeah. But you have to just say, and when I heard my name, I couldn't.
That's actually probably.
I didn't know what had been asked of me, so I just
When I think about that.
Yes, I think so.
It was said that I had poor concentration and was very sort of jittery.
Yeah.
So I was allowed to walk around the classroom and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just after having said that, realised that you're probably right about.
I probably am about your various influences. Yeah.
Imagine I did that
settled
here.
on this one single diagnosis for
Imagine I started getting bored and kind of tired and just walking around.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, it's very hard to keep your concentration on something that you're not that massively interested in.
And since you are only interested in a small number of things.
I do stay awake during the podcast, though.
Yes, well done.
Anyway, moving on. Right. Today, we're actually going to talk about a really sad story. And, this is just so shocking. It would have been little Kyran Durnin's 9th birthday last week. And as Conor Feehan in the Irish Independent pointed out, he won't be blowing out any candles on a cake like an ordinary little 9-year-old boy because he's missing. And this disturbing and perplexing disappearance goes on. Investigations continue. He appears to have they have launched a murder inquiry for this little boy.
They've launched a murder inquiry, so the guards are obviously, by launching a murder inquiry, they have the resources to investigate in a much broader context than a missing persons case.
Oh yeah, they can arrest and everything.
They can arrest, they can use warrants to get, mobile phone evidence or CCTV. But obviously, at the core of it is the fact that a child of that age, a child that had at least some interaction with the state services, TUSLA, etc., a child has just disappeared in modern Ireland. I mean, it is absolutely cannot be something that is accepted by, you just can't have it.
No.
Like, let's be blunt about it.
No.
It cannot be allowed to happen. And it is, we're from many months on, we're nearly 9 months on from the launch of that murder investigation.
Yeah, and still no
clarity. Certainly no clarity that we know about. Oh. I mean, you could not fault the Guard operation since launching that murder investigation. They've been, extraordinarily committed to it. I mean, as they should be with a missing child. But the fact that it was unnoticed for such a period of time, it is truly not.
Interesting you talk about the differences between the missing person and the murder investigations, because we did hear quite a lot of detailed evidence about that, and we're hearing it in the Richard Satchwell case, which started obviously as a missing persons report.
Yeah.
And they talk even about the searches that were done, that they're kind of non-invasive. Richard Satchwell, is questioned, but he's in no time is he under arrest.
And it obviously,
phone records, like all that stuff is in a missing persons case.
Yeah, but I mean, you certainly have more capacity to get stuff. I think obviously in a missing persons case, the person who's missing the phone records would easily be gotten by the Gardaí, but it's whether if they stretch that out to a broader search, they have to go and have a reason for getting a warrant to go through somebody's digital communicate or phone records. So obviously, for example, the case of Mike Gain, I suppose, is something very equivalent as well. Mike Gain has disappeared down in Kerry, a farmer whose his car was found, his wallet and keys were there, and certainly it was initially treated as a missing person case, but it's now been upgraded to a homicide investigation, as the guards in that case call it, and that gives them, as in the Kyran Durnin case, gives them the capacity to just have more resources in all ways.
Now let's go through this a little bit, because Conor Feehan has done a very good job of giving us a bit of a timeline in regards to this, or what is known and what has kind of come up. But basically, Kyran Durnin was in a local school and was recorded on the register as attending the school up to the last day of June 2022.
Yeah.
But on investigation, it was confirmed that a last eyewitness sighting of him in the school was actually in May of that year.
Yeah.
So a full month previous. Now, the school had been told that in the next school term, from the September 2022 on, he was going to a new school. So when he didn't return after the summer, presumably he's out on, with sick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose
certain amount of absences aren't, over-queried. But nonetheless, although he's recorded on the school register as attending the school up to the last day of June, the actual point of this is that it's really May that an eyewitness confirms seeing him in the school.
Yeah.
So May 2022.
Yes. So obviously then the school were told that Kyran was moving to a different school, and he never did in autumn 2022.
But there was no red flags raised in the original school he was in, because they just presumed he was going to a new school.
Exactly. But obviously he had interaction with the state services previously, and you would have hoped that while the individual school couldn't be expected to make a follow-up, but that somebody would have recognised that this young child who hadn't basically appeared anywhere else in school. I mean, obviously, if children don't appear in school, typically parents are contacted, or their red flag should be raised if a child shouldn't be able to just fall off the system like that. Now, in this case, that clearly did happen. But
so the next thing is that they have, as the investigation continues into his whereabouts, sparked, of course, by a missing persons report made by somebody known to both Kyran and his mother, is called Dela. But Gardaí have discovered a photograph of the little boy on a mobile phone, which was given to them basically for analysis. And they confirmed that picture, not just the time it was sent, is actually time-stamped with a date in early June 2022.
Yeah.
So we're back to that sort of, time frame, exactly. And that has given them, the Gardaí, a new time and date from when he was last seen. Previous to that, they had an eyewitness seeing him in the school in late May.
Yeah.
So now they have him alive, at least in early June 2022.
Yeah. So what happens then is I suppose that he does fall off the radar, but there is this one unusual circumstance where his name is registered in as being a guest at a B&B in Dundalk. Now, that is never confirmed. Obviously, if you book into a B&B, you're not having to provide any particular ID, a name. You could book in under any name yourself, and that will be recorded. So that's never fully confirmed, though the birth dates are the same, basically. So that's not confirmed. if that is Kyran, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of these further confusing elements to it.
And also that a child that services were told was Kyran was presented to social workers.
Well,
as part of a care meeting.
Yeah, so this is the most unusual bit of it, and what's being described routinely in the press as a decoy child is brought to a meeting with social services. So social services.
That was in the UK, I think, was it?
That was in the UK. So they're obviously expecting a child of Kyran's age. They wouldn't necessarily have maybe ID photos, or maybe they would, but either way, what is described as a decoy child is brought to this meeting, and that obviously is, at least implies to social services that the child is still alive and somebody's speaking on his behalf. Now, subsequently, as the murder investigation is launched and the guards go through it, it is believed that it's confirmed that child was not Kyran Durnin who attended that meeting.
Now, the thing starts to leak out into the media, I suppose, in about September of last year, when a missing persons report is filed for Kyran and his mother. And the mother is later found safe and well, basically, in the UK. But in an interview at the time with the local paper Drogheda Life, which was published on September 24th last, his grandmother, Rhonda Byrne Tyson, pleads with the public to help find the boy and his mother. And she tells that paper that Kyran and Dela, his mother, and his two sisters were staying at her home in Han Street in Drogheda for a period of time, and that she last saw her daughter, she said, on the night of Wednesday, August 28th, which would have been 22. Yeah?
Yeah.
And she said that she went to bed about 11 o'clock. When she got up, her daughter and Kyran were missing. They'd been sleeping on the couch, but there was no sign of them left, basically. Dela had left a note on the table, she said, saying she needed to get away for a few days. So it was in the aftermath of that report being filed that Dela was located in the UK, but there was no sign of Kyran.
Yes, so obviously the missing person report comes first, but ultimately in October the 16th, Gardaí announced that the missing person case was now being considered a murder investigation, which is unusual, obviously. Clearly not unheard of, but the vast majority of murder investigations are only ever launched after a body is found. It'd be very rare, but again, it does happen that a murder investigation is launched under these circumstances. And it becomes clear as well that the guards have launched this murder investigation. They clearly believe that there's foul play involved, but they do not have any particular information about the location of Kyran's body.
But on October, in a month after really the missing persons report is launched, there's a first search and dig. And that happens at the last known address in Drogheda where Kyran lived, which is on Emer Terrace. And there's an extensive search and the garden is excavated. But the current occupants of that house have nothing to do with it, knew nothing of it or whatever. And a piece of waste ground to the rear of that house was also excavated as part of the same operation. Nothing is found. Now, then we moved to December last.
Yeah.
When on December 10th, a woman was arrested on suspicion of murder and she was released the following day without charge. And on the 12th of December, 2 days later, this man is arrested on suspicion of murder. And another search begins at 2 properties in Drogheda. So detectives are interviewing this man because they believe that he may know something about the covering up of Kyran's disappearance and related to when the social workers start to ask questions about the missing boy and there's meetings organised. So the search, one of the houses that was searched at that stage in December was a quick search. It was finished in the same day. The man arrested was held overnight and an invasive search was held at the second property. Now, again, going back to the current live case of Richard Satchwell, we were given details about the different difference between a non-invasive search and an invasive search. The non-invasive search in that case happened and included the use of the blood identifier substance.
Yeah. So
I can't remember the name of it. Just
can't either,
it begins with an L. Anyway, they spray it and they put a light on it, and it comes up. If
an ultraviolet light, it'll show if they're being cleaned up blood, basically.
An invasive search, which happened in the aftermath of Richard Satchwell's arrest, basically included cadaver dogs being brought in, forensic anthropologists and builders, and then an excavation began, in that case, under the stairs. In the case of Kyran Durnin, that second house, that second property in December, was invasively searched with the help of a specialist cadaver dog. But on the 13th of December, the man was released from Garda custody without charge, and the search at that house, that invasive search, concluded with no findings.
Concluded without anything being found. So that man is released from custody. He's not been named in any media at that stage, but ultimately he's released, and 24 hours later he's found dead.
That quick?
That quick. His name is Anthony Maguire. He's originally from Drogheda. Had a degree of interaction with the guards, but nothing major. Had a number come before the courts for a number of criminal offences. But I suppose what happens is he dies, and the guards obviously are called to the home.
Now he dies, and the way to say that is probably it's a personal tragedy.
Personal tragedy, and
there's no one else involved, and it's sort of an untimely death. But he leaves behind a note. In it, he does not say what happened to Kyran.
No, I mean, obviously that's the link is clear straight away. I mean, and people obviously maybe when they first heard the news thought that this is going to become clear, but the note doesn't detail that. And again, in the aftermath, people who have knowledge of the investigation would say that he's not suspected of actually killing Kyran, but what he is suspected of doing is impeding the search for him, basically, and withholding information. And
being part of that sort of elaborate ruse where, the other child was maybe passed off as Kyran, the decoy.
Yeah. So he effectively takes the secrets of Kyran Durnin's disappearance to his grave. Now, you can see in other cases how somebody that would have knowledge of what actually happened, or have knowledge of the aftermath, or any of those things would be very important to an investigation like this.
Yeah.
But obviously Anthony Maguire it is believed he didn't say anything of particular value while in custody. He would have, all of these things would have been put to him. I imagine that, and I'm only presuming that some digital communications or phone records would have been put to him. Things he might have said before, inconsistencies may have been pointed out. But despite all of this evidence, which guards have to gather before they arrest somebody, nothing came out of it, basically.
Now, that doesn't mean, because of Maguire's death, it doesn't mean the investigation ends, it stalls, and it makes things more difficult in an already complex case. But his device and the device of another suspect have been gone through, just checking through the phone records, and particular emphasis has been placed on patterns around the summer of 2022, that May, June time, which seems to be I suppose that's the timeline where the Gardaí believe he died, during that particular point of time, at some stage during one of those 2 months. So they have discovered as well, and I suppose to back up that kind of theory that that's when he died, that there was a load of almost a daily food order was made to takeaways by a number of people in Drogheda and Dundalk. And around that same time, what was 3 orders is now down to 2.
Yeah.
There's one of the orders missing.
Yeah.
So that's giving the Gardaí another piece of circumstantial evidence to suggest that he may be at this point not alive.
Yeah.
A child.
So, I mean, you can see how the difficulty of building a case, because all of these pieces will have to be put together and followed up on. And, it is a case that's...
There was one last search, I think, in February of this year on Hand Street in Drogheda. there was a search and a dig at a house.
Yeah.
But again, that's been the sort of the latest from the investigation, and nothing has happened since. Obviously, there's investigations going on in the background, and the Gardaí are very focused on, who would have been last in his company.
Yeah, I mean, like in a
More
case,
so than what happens, because I don't think they really have a scenario yet, because they've no body, of course.
No, because, I mean, if you look at how complicated a case is, if somebody is found dead, a body is discovered on the streets, straight away the guards will start working from that point, getting CCTV in particular, canvassing witnesses, see if anybody saw anything the night the tragedy occurs. The CCTV will be captured for leading up to the point of a murder as much as possible. So and even then, those cases are complex and hard. But when you talk about a time frame where you don't really know a day or a location when a child went missing, a lot of those tools, they're just not there. And obviously, of the passage of time, CCTV and witnesses, all of that makes it a really, really complex case. Now, they have spoken to a large number of people. They'll start to look for inconsistencies, start to look for things that don't match up in any statements that they have received. But it is a particularly complex case, I would imagine.
Okay. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.